Hey guys, tonight we're peeling back the curtain on one of history's most misunderstood demographics Roman women. That's right, tonight, you're trading in your duvet for a stola, and your bedtime tea for a goblet of suspiciously watery wine. Welcome to ancient Rome, where the roads are paved in marble, the gossip is sharper than a gladiator's blade, and your daily horoscope is determined by the behavior of some goats on a hill. Before you let the toga hit the floor, go ahead and like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this mildly educational, historically accurate nonsense I do here. Drop a comment telling me what time it is where you are and whether you've ever tried to fall asleep while overthinking ancient plumbing systems. I read them all. Mostly because, like you, I'm also awake at 2 a.m. Now dim those lights, turn on your fan for that soft white noise, tuck yourself in, and prepare for the mildly scandalous lives of women in ancient Rome, because I have questions. Deep, important academic questions. What did Roman women actually do all day when they weren't spinning wool like caffeinated spiders? Did they ever get a moment to themselves? Or was it just one endless loop of hairpins, household gods, and vaguely insulting poetry? Could you survive with no legal rights, no control over your own dowry, and a daily beauty routine that includes lead-based foundation? Would you last a week married to a senator with halitosis and 7 different opinions about the proper temperature of olive oil? And what happened if you were born poor, or worse, rich? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in ancient Rome. The year is 117 AD. Emperor Trajan is in power. Your sandals are made of leather, and your schedule is packed with rituals, gossip, and the occasional exorcism. Good luck. You wake up not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to the distant echo of your husband arguing with a slave about figs. The air smells, faintly of incense, olive oil, and responsibility. You are a matrona now, a Roman wife of status. That means you've got to look dignified, supervise 10 people by breakfast, and possibly make an offering to a household god who looks like a garden gnome. Your bed is a carved wooden frame, hard as philosophical truth, with a mattress stuffed with straw, wool, and the crushed dreams of ancient upholstery. Your linen sheets scratch slightly, but they are white, and in Rome that's not just a colour, it's a class statement. Outside your curtained sleeping area, the house is already stirring. The slaves are up and preparing breakfast, the children are yelling about sandals, and someone's dog has absolutely had it with the neighbour's goat. You rise with purpose and vague regret, pulling your tunica interior over your head. This is the Roman equivalent of pyjamas and emotional armour. A slave named Livia helps you into your outer garments, your stola and palla, which, despite sounding glamorous, are basically giant fabric puzzles with enough pleats to start a toga-based panic attack. As she winds the palla over your shoulder, Livia gossips softly. The senator's wife was seen at the temple twice in one day. Scandalous. The baker's daughter is pregnant, unmarried. Tragic. Someone's cousin saw a comet and now believes her dog is a god. Rome runs on gossip and grain, and since grain shipments are delayed this week, you're getting extra helpings of the former. You glance at your reflection in a bronze mirror and sigh. Your hair needs attention. Badly. Roman hairstyles are feats of engineering. Yours must be curled, pinned, and twisted into something that says, "I'm elegant, powerful, and completely in control of my household chaos." Which is a lie, obviously. The last time you left the cook unsupervised, he tried to deep fry lentils in wine. You haven't spoken of the incident. No one has. After your hair is properly fortified with pins and hope, you make your way to the atrium. This is the central courtyard of your home, where the household gods live in their shrine and pretend not to judge your parenting. You light a small offering, some incense, a crumb of bread, a silent prayer that today won't involve your cousin showing up drunk again. The Lares and Penates accept your gifts with the same ancient indifference they've shown for centuries. You bow respectfully, then side-eye the smoke to make sure it doesn't spell out anything ominous. The day officially begins. You sit gracefully at a table while your personal assistant, who is 12 and knows everything, reads off today's to-do list. Visit the midwife. Send a message to your mother. Make sure the wool gets spun. Again. Because if Roman women aren't spinning wool, the gods get testy. You think about outsourcing it to a slave, but then you'd lose moral high ground, and that's already hanging on by a thread. Pun intended. Breakfast arrives. It is fine. Bread, cheese, olives, and something your husband insists is a delicacy but tastes like salted despair. You smile anyway. Matrone do not complain. They raise eyebrows, sip watered wine, and save complaints for later, preferably in the form of subtle, cutting remarks during family dinners. Your husband finally joins you, looking vaguely triumphant. He has won the great fig argument, though no one knows what that means. He talks about politics. You nod supportively while secretly wondering if anyone has ever strangled a senator with a laurel wreath. Legally. Once breakfast is over, you begin your rounds. You inspect the storerooms, nod at the servants, pretend to understand the household accounts, and intervene when the cleaner accidentally insults the cook's ancestry. You settle disputes, arrange schedules, and prevent minor disasters using only your voice and the weight of Roman expectations. Because here's the thing. Men might run the Senate, but you run everything else. Behind every successful Roman man is a wife who paid the bills, raised the children, handled the staff, soothed the in-laws, and reminded everyone where the good wine is hidden. As mid-morning light filters through the atrium skylight, you take a deep breath. The air smells like beeswax, ash, and ambition. Another day in Rome has begun. You are respectable, responsible, slightly overdressed, and one hairpin away from collapse. But you've got this. Because you are a matrona, and even the gods think twice before messing with you before noon. It's styling time. Your hair must defy gravity, societal expectations, and whatever slept on it during the night. Armed with hot irons, combs, and at least 2 slaves dedicated solely to your scalp, you begin the hour-long process of becoming a walking architectural feat. Roman beauty is suffering. So is your neck. The first step is detangling. This is done with a bone comb that feels like it's been sharpened out of spite. Livia, the senior hair slave, tuts softly as she works, like your hair has personally offended her. You wince, but say nothing. Complaining would only invite stories about how Empress Faustina never flinched, even while getting her hair teased with a rake. Today's style is an elaborate braided crown involving loops, coils, and something ominously referred to as the triple twist of virtue. It's less a hairstyle and more a structural challenge. The goal is to look like a goddess descending from Olympus. The result is usually closer to very determined bird's nest with delusions of grandeur. You sit upright on a carved wooden stool, spine straighter than a senator's moral compass during election week. Your only job is to not move while the 2 women behind you engage in synchronized pinning that resembles low-grade combat. Bronze pins the size of tent pegs go in one after another, twisting your hair into submission. At one point, someone mutters a prayer to Venus for volume. A small iron rod, heated in coals, is used to curl the ends into tight spirals. This part always smells like scorched hope and olive oil. It sizzles dangerously close to your ear. You've learned not to flinch. Last time you did, you ended up with a bald patch and an emergency shrine visit. Halfway through, your husband wanders in, takes one look at the hair battlefield, and flees without a word. Wise man. The fashion this season, according to upper-class whispers, is the tower style, a tiered concoction requiring padding, scaffolding, and the strength of 10 opinions. It's supposed to symbolize status, fertility, and control over chaos. So far, it's mostly symbolizing neck cramps and early onset migraines. But you persevere, because Roman beauty isn't effortless, it's effort with a capital E, followed by several hours of aching joints. This is a culture where women are expected to look flawless by dawn, smell like myrrh, and radiate divine calm, while their scalp is being forcibly redesigned. Occasionally, your mind wanders. You think about simpler times back when you were a girl, and hairstyle meant try not to fall in the mud. Back before marriage, when the most stressful decision you made was whether to wear your good tunic or the one with fewer questionable stains. Now your hair represents your entire household. A sloppy curl says your slaves are lazy. A crooked braid suggests you've lost control of your family. Heaven forbid you have frizz, it's practically a public declaration of social decline. You're not just styling hair, you're crafting a reputation. You try to distract yourself by asking Livia about temple gossip. She tells you that Claudia from across the street burned her hair off trying to imitate Cleopatra's look with too much resin. You pretend to be horrified. Secretly, you're relieved. At least you're not alone in this daily Roman beauty pageant. Your younger slave, Junie, offers you a dab of rosewater behind the ears to refresh your spirit. It does not. But you smile. The scent helps mask the smell of overcooked hair and ambition. As the final braid is pinned into place with something that looks like a decorative spear, you glance at your reflection in a polished silver mirror. It's magnificent. A towering feat of loops and curls, somehow symmetrical and slightly terrifying. You look like someone who knows the price of good olive oil and how to command an army of domestic staff with a single glance. Your neck, however, is beginning to seize up. You stand slowly, carefully, as if your entire skull might tip over, and offer your thanks. Livia beams with the pride of a true artist. Junie offers you a small fig. You don't ask why. You eat it solemnly. It's tradition, probably. As you move through the house, your hair bobs slightly, held aloft by optimism and several pounds of bronze. Slaves nod in approval. The steward bows. Even the cook pauses his argument with the kitchen boy to say, "Good volume today, Domina. You've won the daily battle. The Roman hair gods are appeased. For now. But don't get too comfortable. Tomorrow is a new day. And there's a rumor that the senator's wife is trying out a 7-layer braid that requires a ladder and an invocation to Minerva. Sleep with one eye open. And maybe, just maybe, on your back. Your hairstyle has structural integrity, but your pillow does not. You smear your face with a delightful blend of chalk, vinegar, and substances that probably belong in a tomb. Lead-based foundation? Absolutely. Mercury eyeshadow? Of course. Nothing says, glowing Roman woman, like a little low-grade poisoning before lunch. This is not skincare as self-care. This is skincare as social warfare. You're not trying to look youthful. You're trying to look statusful. Pale skin isn't just fashionable. It's a billboard that screams, "I do not work outside. I've never lifted a basket in my life. The closest I've come to manual labor is dramatically waving a fan." So you start your routine with a base layer of Cerussa that's lead carbonate, for those playing along at home. It's a soft white paste that makes your skin glow in that ethereal and potentially toxic kind of way. The smoother your face, the better. Texture is for the poor. Pores are for peasants. If your complexion doesn't look like a marble statue that's about to cry, are you even trying? Your slave hands you a bronze jar, its lid crusted with yesterday's ambitions. You dip your fingers in and apply a generous layer of white. It smells faintly of vinegar and regret. The lead seeps in, bringing a ghostly radiance and eventually organ damage. But you don't know that. All you know is that when you walk past the butcher's wife, she squints at your cheekbones with envy. That's worth a little internal corrosion. Next up, rouge. You need some color to prove you're alive, and not just a very pretty statue someone propped up in the atrium. You dab on crushed red ochre or wine sediment, basically whatever looks vaguely flush-like and hasn't gone moldy yet. If you're lucky, it matches your lips. If not, you just call it fashion and hope no one's brave enough to say otherwise. Your cheeks now resemble the result of mild embarrassment or a brisk jog, neither of which is socially acceptable, but both of which are trendy in pigment form. You nod in approval, then it's time for the eyes. Roman eye makeup is where the real creativity happens. You have options. Burnt cork, ground antimony, powdered lapis lazuli if you're fancy, and divided by or Cleopatra. Today, you opt for a classic, mercury-based shadow in a shade called Night Terror. It stings, sure, but that just means it's working. You line your lids with kohl, a substance that is equal parts soot and sorcery. It's supposed to ward off the evil eye. Mostly it just makes you look like you've either committed a crime or are about to. Either way, the effect is mesmerizing. Mascara? You improvise. Some women use soot mixed with goose fat. Others just flutter their lashes and hope for the best. You try not to blink too aggressively, lest something dislodge and land in your soup. Now for the lips. Forget modern lipsticks. You're working with red clay, iron oxide, and possibly beetles. The consistency is somewhere between paste and regret. You smear it on with your finger, accidentally overlining just a little, but decide it gives you a bold, senatorial mistress energy. Perfect. To finish, a dab of perfume behind each ear. Not Chanel, but a mix of rosewater, myrrh, and something that might be fermented dolphin glands. The scent is strong, floral, and not entirely legal in 3 provinces. You smell expensive. That's all that matters. Your reflection, such as it is in the slightly warped bronze mirror, reveals a woman who is ready to face the forum, judge her neighbors, and possibly haunt a future archaeologist's dreams. But beauty has a cost, and not just the monetary kind. Your skin is starting to itch. A mild reaction? Perhaps. Mercury doesn't like to be ignored. And that lead-based glow? It's slowly leaching calcium from your bones. You've had 3 nosebleeds this month. You chalk it up literally to stress. Still, you persist. Because in ancient Rome, a woman's face is her resume. Wrinkles say, "I'm tired." Freckles say, "I've been outside like a peasant." And acne. That's a full-blown public relations crisis. Your husband won't notice, of course. He's too busy giving political speeches about grain imports and pretending he doesn't wear a wig. But the other women will see, and they'll know if you miss a step. The senator's wife once showed up with a bare forehead and was socially exiled for a week. Brutal. As the morning sun climbs higher, your face begins to set like plaster. You avoid smiling too much, lest your cheeks crack. Eating will be an exercise in restraint and angle control. Drinking wine requires a straw. Your pores have officially given up. But you? You've never looked more like a walking triumphal arch with eyeliner. And that's the goal. So you rise from your stool, head held high, cheeks dusted in danger, and stride out into the atrium. Because beauty may fade, but arsenic lasts forever. You are the CEO of your household. Which means you spend the morning telling people what to do while pretending not to notice when they ignore you. The cook burns the bread. The cleaner drops the amphora. The family dog eats a sacred offering. You maintain dignity through gritted teeth and passive-aggressive libations. Running a Roman household isn't just about folding linens and lighting incense. It's about command. You are the glue, the backbone, and occasionally the emotional hostage of this beautifully tiled madhouse. Your staff consists of 14 slaves, 2 children, 1 in-law, and a parrot who won't stop quoting Cicero out of context. You start every morning with a to-do list and end every evening with the creeping suspicion that absolutely no one did anything you asked. Your first order of business is locating your steward, a man named Publius, who smells like old scrolls and stress. He's supposed to keep the household running smoothly, but mostly just delivers updates in the tone of a man who's emotionally checked out somewhere around the Saturnalia of 112 AD. You ask if the laundry was done. He nods vaguely. You ask if the new tunics were delivered. He changes the subject to grain prices. You consider setting something on fire to make a point. Next, you do your inspection walk. It's ceremonial. You stride through the atrium with your chin up, your pallor dramatically trailing behind you, like a cape of judgment. You pass the kitchen, where smoke is wafting out of a clay oven, and the cook is fanning it with a sandal. The bread is, once again, crisped beyond expectations. You say nothing. You just stare at it long enough to make the cook sweat, then continue on your way. In the garden, the cleaner has managed to knock over a priceless statue of Minerva. Again, you take a deep breath, adjust your jewelry, and tell him gently that if Minerva falls one more time, she's staying down and so is he. Back inside, a slave girl is attempting to scrub a mosaic floor with what appears to be a piece of fruit. You ask why. She says it's lemon-scented. You silently revise her training schedule to include basic logic. Then there's the family dog, a smug, floor-cushion-shaped creature named Rufus, who only responds to commands given in perfect Latin and has taken a particular liking to sacred food offerings. This morning, he swallowed half an egg, meant for the goddess Vesta, then looked you directly in the eye and burped. You consider making him the new household god. You take a seat in your favorite chair, a carved ivory thing that's only slightly cursed, and begin issuing instructions like a general preparing for battle. The laundry must be sorted. The wine amphorae in the cellar need inventorying. Your mother-in-law is visiting this afternoon, so someone needs to find the good cushions, and if they smell like goat again, there will be a reckoning. You call for the house tutor, who's been teaching your son about rhetoric and accidentally encouraging him to argue with you about everything. The tutor bows. You raise an eyebrow and ask how the lessons are going. He mutters something about natural leadership potential and excuses himself before you can question the ink stain on your son's forehead. Mid-morning brings your in-laws, unannounced as always. They arrive with the energy of people who think they're still in charge of your life. You offer them honeyed dates, seat them in the shaded part of the atrium, and brace yourself for a 45-minute discourse on how the houseplants look less vibrant than they did under Tiberius. You nod politely, all while planning a retaliatory gift of a deeply symbolic cactus. Meanwhile, the house accountant drops by to inform you that your olive oil supplier has raised prices again. You pretend to consider switching vendors, even though you know you'll stay with him because he's the only one who delivers on time and doesn't flirt with your maid. By noon, your list is only half complete, your head hurts, and your incense budget is spiraling out of control. You retreat to your writing desk for a brief moment of paperwork, which is less about recording expenses and more about underlining the same word repeatedly, while fantasizing about living alone in a hut with no employees, no relatives, and absolutely no statues to dust. A slave knocks gently to inform you the bath is ready. Finally, you rise, regally, and tell Publius to please not let anything burn down while you're gone. He nods without making eye contact. As you walk past the kitchen again, you notice the cook is now arguing with the cleaner over who left a squid on the floor. The squid is, notably, alive. You keep walking, because you are the dominer of this household, and you will not be defeated by seafood before lunch. You venture into the bustling Roman Forum, a place that's equal parts marketplace and low-level chaos. There are grapes to buy, gossip to overhear, and a guy loudly selling magic beans that are definitely just lentils. You clutch your purse and pretend to look intimidating. The Forum is the beating heart of Rome if the heart was slightly cracked, smelled faintly of goat, and constantly shouted about fish prices. You're here because the household needs more honey. The cook broke another amphora, and you're the only one with enough authority to argue with the olive oil vendor and walk away with your dignity intact. Probably. The first thing that hits you is the smell. A potent blend of fresh bread, sweaty tunics, overripe fruit, and the unmistakable aroma of someone cooking meat next to something that used to be meat. It's not unpleasant. It's just very Roman. Your sandals stick slightly to the stones as you walk, courtesy of last night's wine spill, or possibly a public urination incident that everyone's pretending didn't happen. The streets are packed. Merchants shout their wares with theatrical flair, like failed actors with access to produce. Figs, figs, sweet as Venus herself, one man bellows. You raise an eyebrow. Venus would sue for slander. You pass a stall selling fabric dyed such an aggressive purple, you feel judged by it. The vendor waves a swatch in your face. Imported from the East, he says. You run a finger over it. It's rough, smells like fish, and was almost certainly dyed in someone's bathtub. You nod politely and flee. Over at the fruit stall, things are tense. Two women are fighting over a melon that neither of them plans to buy. You attempt to ply-nose, sidestep the dispute, only to be hit by a stray fig. It sticks to your shoulder. You pretend it's a fashion statement. You stop at a spice vendor who greets you like an old friend. This is a tactical move. He's trying to butter you up before charging double for cinnamon that might be tree bark. You narrow your eyes, ask about last week's shipment, and casually mention you know the magistrate's wife. He visibly wilts and knocks off a few sesterces. You win. Again. Everywhere, there's noise. Children dart between stalls, weaving like caffeinated eels. A goat escapes from somewhere and makes a bold sprint toward the cheese stand. An elderly man trips over a basket of radishes and blames Jupiter. Someone sneezes with such force it knocks over a stack of clay plates. The vendor cries. You keep walking. You reach the olive oil vendor. A man with eyebrows so large they have their own opinions. He insists the price has gone up because of bandits. You know full well the only bandits in this equation are his cousins. You haggle like your household budget depends on it because it does. Eventually you settle on a price that's only mildly insulting. A boy approaches, offering to carry your goods for a few coins. You accept, then spend the next 20 minutes watching him like a hawk in case he runs off with your vinegar. He doesn't. You tip him anyway, because he reminds you of your nephew, and because his tunic is held together with optimism and one rusty pin. You pause near the fountain to rest and reorganize. It's here that the true forum sport takes place. Eavesdropping. Two senators' wives argue about whose husband wore makeup to the last trial. A priest loudly debates with a fishmonger about divine punishment for dishonest scales. A young woman in scandalously short sleeves is being judged by an entire knitting circle disguised as a fruit stand. The forum is where reputations are made, ruined, and reassembled by lunchtime. One wrong word, and you'll be the talk of Rome for a week. One right outfit, and you'll be mimicked by every matron between here and Pompeii. A street performer distracts the crowd with a juggling act involving knives and fruit. You politely clap, then nearly fall backward when a passing donkey brushes your elbow. It snorts, unimpressed, and continues on its way, dragging a cart of cabbages and a very sleepy toddler. As you make your way back toward the edge of the forum, arms full and wallet only slightly lighter than planned, you spot your friend Octavia. She's deep in conversation with a man claiming to sell divine bread, which looks suspiciously like regular bread, but with a laurel on it. You rescue her, exchange gossip, and agree to meet for wine tomorrow, assuming you both survive laundry day. By the time you exit the forum, your sandals are dusty, your temper frayed, and your purchases secured. You made it. You weren't mugged. You didn't buy lentils pretending to be beans. You even got the good honey. And that, in ancient Rome, is called winning. It's bath time, which also means it's judgment time. You glide into the Bolnea, trying not to slip on soap that's just oil with ideas. Other women whisper behind fans. Did you hear about Julia's third husband? Do you think she poisoned him? You pretend not to care, but your eyebrow arch says otherwise. The Roman bathhouse is not merely a place to scrub off the filth of a city that doesn't believe in garbage collection. It's a theatre, a stage, a social coliseum where the battles are fought with glances, giggles, and suspiciously specific compliments. You're here to wash, but mostly, you're here to listen. You disrobe with practiced elegance in the apoditerium or changing room, pretending not to notice that Claudia has lost weight, or that Cornelia's new stola is obviously dyed with the cheap kind of saffron. Your own attire neatly folded, subtly expensive signals that you're a woman of taste. And judgment. Lots of judgment. Your slave gathers your belongings while you step delicately into the tepidarium, the warm room designed to open your pores and your gossip receptors. The air is thick with steam, rose oil, and unresolved social tension. You seat yourself on a marble bench that's been warmed to the temperature of an overcooked lentil. Across the room, two women are whispering too loudly about a priestess who's far too familiar with the gladiator trainer. You silently file that away for later. Next, it's off to the caldarium, the hot room. It smells like eucalyptus and betrayal. You begin to sweat in a manner that is both cleansing and slightly undignified. A slave brings a strigil, a curved metal scraper used to remove oil and dirt, and possibly also your dignity. She scrapes gently at first, then with increasing confidence, as if trying to exfoliate your memories. You let her, while keeping an eye on the doorway, in case your frenemy Lucilla decides to make a dramatic entrance. She does. Draped in silk and smugness, Lucilla glides in with two attendants and an expression that says, "I know something you don't, and it's scandalous." She settles across from you with theatrical grace, flanked by loyal flatterers who laugh just a little too hard when she says the water reminds her of her ex-husband's tears. You nod politely. You've prepared for this. The next phase is conversation. You discuss temple offerings, the new bakery near the forum, and whether Senator Vitellius's new wife is actually a cousin or just looks like one. Each sentence is layered with implication. You look well really means, I see your new diet is working. How is your husband's health? Really means, I heard he collapsed at dinner again, and I'm wondering if you've upped the dosage. Lucilla casually mentions that her cousin's friend was invited to dine with the emperor's niece. You respond by noting that your husband had drinks, with a man whose villa shares a wall with a praetor. It's a social arms race, and the ammunition is anecdotal at best. You both smile. The other women watch. It's hard to tell who's winning, but your hair hasn't frizzed yet, so you're calling it a draw. The steam starts to get to you, so you transition to the frigidarium, the cold plunge pool. This is the Roman version of a personality test. You step in gracefully, resisting the urge to gasp, as the icy water reminds your organs that they are mortal. Across the pool, a woman shrieks and immediately regrets everything. You feel superior. The cold water refreshes and resets. It's also the best place to eavesdrop, as the acoustics carry even the faintest whisper across the tiles. You learn that Flavia's daughter eloped with a musician, disgraceful, that someone's been diluting their perfume with vinegar, dishonest, and that the high priest's nephew was spotted buying love potions from a woman who lives in a wine barrel, delightful. After the soak, you return to the changing room, skin glowing, spirits lifted, and your mental scroll of scandal significantly updated. You towel off with linen that smells faintly of lavender and mild superiority. Your slave dresses you again while discreetly reporting that someone stole your sandal. You sigh and slip into backup sandals with the quiet rage of someone who knows it was Lucilla. As you exit the bathhouse, you pass by a cluster of younger women trying to imitate your strut. One of them asks if your complexion is from imported soap. You smile mysteriously. It's not. It's from stress, espionage, and just a touch of crushed pearls. Because in ancient Rome, cleanliness is next to goddessness. But power? Power is knowing who poisoned whose husband, and exactly when to bring it up over wine. Religion is everywhere, and so are shrines. Today, you sacrifice a small cake to a household deity, chant some Latin, and pretend you totally understand what the augur is talking about. A chicken is involved. No one questions it. As a respectable Roman matrona, it's not enough to manage your household, look flawless under layers of poisonous makeup, and survive the forum. You must also ensure that the gods are pleased, every single day. Because if the wine spoils, or the children get a rash, or the kitchen catches fire again, people won't say, "That's life." They'll say, "She definitely skipped a libation." So you start your morning in the lararium, a small shrine in the atrium dedicated to your household gods, the Lares and Penates. These ancient, slightly judgmental deities protect your home, your family, and apparently your leftover lentils. The shrine features tiny figurines that look like rejected garden gnomes and smell faintly of smoke and incense. One of them is missing a nose. You never mention it. You light a small oil lamp and offer a bit of cake, carefully burned at the edges because gods love chard. Carbohydrates, obviously. Your slave whispers the chant while you nod along, pretending to understand the precise purpose of the Latin phrases. Something about protection, fertility, or maybe requesting that the dog stop eating sacred offerings. Next, you sprinkle wine on the floor in front of the shrine. Not the good wine, of course. The ritual wine, which is to say, the stuff that's been opened for 3 days and smells like foot. The gods accept it, or ignore it. Either way, you've done your part. Later in the day, there's a public ceremony at the local temple. Something about the moon, or harvest, or possibly a goat's birthday. You don your ceremonial stola, adjust your hair so it looks humble, yet divinely pleasing, and make your way through the streets, avoiding beggars, poets, and that one guy who insists he's a prophet but lives in a barrel and smells like old olives. At the temple steps, you're greeted by an augur, a priest of considerable importance and zero humor. His job today? Interpret the will of the gods based on the behavior of birds. You stand there, squinting at a confused chicken on a pedestal, while the augur declares that the gods are pleased, possibly annoyed, or maybe just hungry. The chicken poops. He nods solemnly. You pretend to be deeply moved. You proceed into the temple, which smells like wax, smoke, and something that might be divine intervention or maybe mildew. The marble floor is cold beneath your sandals. The priestess leads a hymn that sounds suspiciously like your neighbor's wedding song. You sing along anyway, lips moving to words you barely remember from childhood. Religion in Rome is less about belief and more about performance, and you're doing your best, Meryl Streep. A procession follows. You hold a branch of laurel like it's a fashion accessory, then help carry a small statue of a minor god whose name changes depending on who's asking. The statue is bizarre, one arm missing, one eye slightly higher than the other, and a suspiciously smug expression. It's meant to represent protection and wisdom. It looks more like your uncle after 3 cups of wine. You reach the altar. A goat is brought forward. The priest offers prayers while waving incense and making everyone within 10 feet tear up from the fumes. The goat looks bored. A flute plays. A chicken squawks somewhere in the distance. The gods, presumably, are thrilled. Then comes the sacrifice. You avert your eyes, as is customary, though you peek slightly because, let's be honest, it's the most exciting thing that's happened all week. The goat meets its fate. The augur reads the entrails like they're an ancient version of a mood ring. Rome is safe, he announces. Probably. Afterward, there's a feast for the participants. You eat boiled eggs, honey cakes, and wine that tastes like it lost an argument with a raisin. Lucilla tries to outshine you with a larger offering dish, but her laurel wreath is crooked, and her tunic has a stain. You win this round. You make your way home, the smell of incense still clinging to your hair. The gods are fed. The rituals are performed. The chicken has done whatever it was supposed to do, and your social standing remains intact. Back at your lararium, you murmur a final thank you to the household gods. The one with the broken nose seems to wink, or maybe it's the candle flickering. Either way, you toss in a crumb of cake and a whispered wish for tomorrow to involve fewer goats. Because in ancient Rome, faith is less about heaven and more about hedging your bets. And no one hedges quite like a Roman woman with a well-fed chicken and a backup cake. You sit in a sunny courtyard, spinning wool. It's what virtuous Roman women do. Spin, spin, spin. The rhythm is soothing, the boredom is not. You begin to question your life choices, the meaning of empire, and whether the gods are just watching for fun. Spinning is supposed to be symbolic. It represents virtue, discipline, and your complete lack of anything better to do. You were told that good Roman women spin wool the way good Roman men deliver speeches, endlessly, and with the vague hope someone's impressed. In reality, spinning wool is about sitting very still while your hands do repetitive motions that slowly unravel your sense of time. There's a basket of raw fleece next to you, and it smells, how shall we put this, agricultural? You pick through it, removing twigs, burrs, and what you desperately hope is just a raisin. You roll the fleece between your fingers, pulling it into long, soft strands. Then you attach it to your distaff, a stick that exists solely to remind you that the next 6 hours will be deeply uneventful. From there, you begin to twist and pull, turning tufts of wool into thread, and vague thoughts into full-blown philosophical crises. The sun is warm on your back, birds chirp. A neighbor's slave is loudly being berated for burning lentils. Everything is calm, too calm. The kind of calm that makes you stare into space and wonder, is this it? Is this what Roman greatness looks like? A woman hunched over yarn, mentally arguing with Jupiter while a goat eats her potted basil. Your slave, Junie, is carding more wool nearby. She hums a tune that has exactly 4 notes and no end. It loops. Forever. You try not to scream. You look at your spindle. It's spinning obediently, whirling like it has somewhere to be. You, on the other hand, do not. You haven't left the house since last market day. Your biggest recent adventure was discovering a new way to remove wine stains from linen using vinegar and spite. The worst part? You're good at this. Your thread is even, your rhythm is consistent, and your posture is excellent, because nothing says high status like spinning wool while looking bored yet elegant. You are the picture of Roman womanhood, industrious, pious, and one eye twitch away from unraveling literally and emotionally. You hear voices approaching. Lucilla and Flavia, your fellow matrons and frenemies, arrive for the daily spinning circle. They bring their distaffs, their egos, and just enough passive aggression to flavor the air. Lucilla greets you with a smile sharp enough to cut linen. Already spinning? So diligent. I usually wait until after my flute lesson. You return her smile with one of your own. Oh, I prefer to finish before my poetry recitation. That way I don't get wool on the scrolls. Flavia compliments your wool. You thank her, then quietly note that her thread is uneven and slightly damp, which can only mean it was rushed. You don't say it out loud, of course. You're not a barbarian. The three of you sit together, spinning in silence that's only broken by the occasional pointed cough or exaggerated sigh. You discuss recent temple ceremonies, your husband's opinion on grain tariffs, and whether the augur is faking his bird readings. Consensus? Definitely. At some point, Lucilla casually drops that her daughter can already weave full-length tunics. You nod, then mention that your son has started reading Virgil for fun. It's a strange, thread-based arms race, but it's the only one available. You spin. They spin. Time becomes meaningless. Eventually, your mind wanders again. You think about the empire, vast, glorious, absurd. You think about Cleopatra, who probably never spun anything in her life except a political alliance. You think about Minerva, goddess of wisdom and crafts, and wonder if she ever got bored watching mortals make socks. A fly buzzes past your nose. You swat it with your spindle, miss, and stab yourself in the thigh. You bleed a little. You consider writing a poem about it and submitting it anonymously to the temple newsletter. The afternoon drags on. You finish your skein of thread. You tie it off with precision and just a hint of resentment. Another bundle ready for weaving. Another day spent performing quiet, unseen labor that history will either romanticize or forget. You stand up, stretch your back, and look at the pale sky. A single cloud drifts by. You briefly consider spinning a metaphor out of it, then think better of it. No need to be dramatic. That's what the wine is for. Back inside, you place your finished wool in a basket, wash your hands, and prepare for the next round of rituals, supervision, or bathhouse espionage. But deep down, you know you'll be back on that bench tomorrow, spinning, watching the world spin without you, and quietly wondering if any of the gods have hobbies. Spoiler, they don't. They just watch you. Spin, spin, spin. She appears at the door like a well-meaning storm cloud. With a voice like gravel and the moral compass of a tax inspector, your mother-in-law gives unsolicited advice about fertility, soup, and your declining posture. You nod, smile, and dream of poisoned mushrooms. She doesn't knock. Roman mothers-in-law don't knock. They descend, cloaked in authority, experience, and the deep conviction that no one has ever folded laundry properly since 83 BCE. Her sandals thump ominously across the atrium tiles as she announces her arrival with a single phrase, "I thought the house smelled strange." You brace yourself. She starts with the usual, a slow scan of your outfit, hair, and overall aura. You're dressed impeccably. Of course, your stola pressed, your pallor artfully draped, your jewelry subtle yet threatening. But somehow, she still finds something. "That brooch," she mutters. "It's brave." She sits without asking, claiming her usual spot by the window, where the lighting hits her cheekbones like judgment. A slave brings her wine. She sniffs it, raises an eyebrow, and takes a single, disapproving sip. You don't know what the wine did wrong, but it's clearly on thin ice. Then comes the monologue. It always begins the same way. "When I was your age," followed by an origin story that involves waking up before dawn, spinning enough wool to clothe the Senate, birthing 6 children before lunch, and making a stew so perfect the gods still talk about it. You've heard this story before. It changes slightly each time. The number of children fluctuates. So does the size of the goat she allegedly wrestled for fun. You nod politely, hands folded in your lap, while internally reciting spells of protection. She moves on to fertility. Any news? She asks, eyes sharp. Backatches? Cravings? A prophetic dream about figs? You smile and say something vague about fate. She frowns. When I was with child, I could smell thunder. You must listen to your body. You begin listening, and it says, run. Then come the soup critiques. I tried the lentil soup yesterday, she says, as if reporting a crime. It was watery, weak, lacking soul. You thank her for her candor. She leans in. Use more garlic. And more disappointment. That's what gives it depth. From there, she transitions seamlessly into posture. You are, apparently, slouching. It's a moral failing. A woman who slouches raises lazy children, she intones. Also, your neck looks tired. You straighten immediately, resisting the urge to tell her your neck is tired, from holding in all your retorts. As she continues, you daydream of wild mushrooms, the kind that grow in mysterious places and make excellent garnishes or solutions. You imagine a world where visits from in-laws are limited to once per Saturnalia. You imagine hiding in the wine cellar until she leaves. You imagine being reborn as a goose. She's now recounting the time she personally advised a Vestal virgin on how to arrange her hair. You didn't ask. No one asked. The story continues. Occasionally, she gestures to parts of the house. That curtain is crooked. The floor is dusty. I think the couch has slumped. You nod, make a mental note to rearrange nothing and offer her another. Honey cake. She declines. Too sweet. Like your excuses. You try to change the subject perhaps to politics, or literature, or something non-explosive like temple architecture. But no, she brings it back to marriage. A husband is like a fire, she says. Neglect it, and it dies. Feed it too much, and it burns the house down. Stoke it just enough, and maybe he'll take out the trash. You didn't even know the house had trash. Now you're worried about it. Your husband passes through the atrium at this exact moment, notices the tension in the air, and instantly pretends to need something in the cellar. Coward. You're left alone again with the matriarchal tornado. She softens briefly, patting your hand and calling you dear. You think it's genuine, until she adds, You remind me of myself before I got serious. The implication lingers like incense made of guilt. Finally, after what feels like several lunar cycles, she rises to leave. You escort her to the door, still smiling, still upright, still resisting the overwhelming desire to scream into a cushion. She turns one last time. Don't forget the full moon is coming. Good time for conception or airing rugs. And with that she disappears into the street like a warning from the fates themselves. You close the door gently, lean against it, and exhale. You survived. And with any luck, she won't return until the soup offends her again. Which, let's be honest, is probably tomorrow. Surprise! Your husband invited 12 sweaty senators over for dinner. You've got 2 hours to prepare a 7-course meal, rehearse political small talk, and make sure nobody mistakes the vomitorium for the wine room again. You were planning to spend the evening quietly reading Ovid and pretending you didn't hear the neighbor's lyre practice. Instead, you're elbow deep in a crisis. Your husband, bless his toga-wrapped optimism, forgot to mention this important networking opportunity until a slave casually asked where to seat the arriving officials. You take a deep breath and enter battlefield mode. First, the food. Roman dinner parties are not simple affairs. They are theatrical performances with olives. Your cook is already melting down literally and emotionally in the kitchen. The fire's too hot, the fish is too cold, and someone dropped the garum, fermented fish sauce, into the lentil pot. Again, you calmly, yet murderously, Suggest a menu that won't kill anyone or offend Jupiter. Stuffed dormice, honey, glazed ham, oysters, if they stop moving, and of course, a variety of vegetables no one will eat but everyone will comment on. You assign the wine boy to refill amphorae and not speak unless directly asked about vintage. The slaves are dispatched like tiny military units, one to sweep the atrium, one to fluff the cushions, one to remove that statue of Mars with the unsettling grin, another to uninvite your weird cousin who always tries to sing after dessert. Then the decor. The torches are too smoky. The garlands are wilted. Someone placed the peacock feathers next to the pork, which is an omen if you're superstitious, or just trying to avoid a diplomatic incident with the animal cults. You rearrange everything with the speed of a woman possessed by divine hospitality. You check your reflection. You're glowing, but not in a good way. You throw on a new stola, adjust your hair into an updo that screams, "I'm elegant, but not trying too hard," and reapply your eyeliner with the precision of a general drawing up battle plans. Perfect. Just as you're finishing, the first guest arrives. Senator Plotius, who smells like expensive wax and fear. He greets you with the traditional Roman kiss, 3 inches from your face, and a compliment that may or may not be sarcastic. You usher him into the atrium with all the warmth of a woman who has considered exile. The rest follow, each louder and redder than the last. Togas are swishing. Sandals are squeaking. Someone brought a pet monkey. You don't ask why. You just nod at the slave whose entire job tonight is monkey containment. You guide them toward the triclinium, the formal dining room where couches await. They recline dramatically, as is tradition, and begin their pre-dinner boasting. One brags about his new villa, another about his wife's poetry. A third tries to one-up them by describing a dream in which he personally wrestled a cloud. The wine starts flowing. You offer toasts. Your husband laughs too hard at Senator Cassius's joke about Gallic accents. You smile politely and hope someone chokes on a grape. Not fatally, just enough to change the subject. Dinner begins. Courses arrive in waves, some more edible than others. The dormice are undercooked. The oysters are too fresh. A senator pokes at a jelly made from eel and mulberry with a look that says, "I fought in Germania for this?" Conversation turns to politics, then religion, then theatre. You nod along, gently steering the talk away from anything that might cause a duel before dessert. One man insists the stars foretold his re-election. Another insists they foretold his opponent's arrest. You pretend to sneeze and ask who wants more olives. Then comes the entertainment, a poetry recitation. Your husband insists on reading his own. You stare blankly into the middle distance and remember happier times like childbirth. The guests clap out of obligation. One wipes a tear, possibly from emotion, more likely from the eel jelly. Just as things settle, someone opens the wrong door and wanders into the vomitorium. They return confused, slightly damp, and holding a statue of Apollo. You pour them more wine and say, "Don't worry, it happens to everyone." Dessert arrives, honey cakes, fruit, and a flaming cheese that nearly lights the senator's beard on fire. You fan the flames literally and socially and ensure nobody sues. At long last, the guests leave. One forgets his sandals. Another accidentally adopts the monkey. You stand in the wreckage of your evening, clutching a goblet and debating whether wine counts as a meal. You've survived. And tomorrow, when your husband says, "Let's do that again," you'll smile, refill your cup, and whisper the oldest Roman phrase known to womankind, "No thank you." Dressing is an ordeal. Togas are not for women, those are for men and their egos. You wear a stola and a palla, which are basically large rectangles with ambition. The goal is modesty. The result is heat stroke. To begin, you start with the tunica interior, your base layer. It's a simple linen shift, the Roman version of sweatpants, if sweatpants were constantly in danger of being declared too revealing by a relative named Agrippina. It's light, breathable, and mildly judgmental. You slip it on, knowing full well it's the last comfortable thing you'll wear today. Next comes the stola, the traditional outer garment of a Roman matrona. It's long, pleated, and designed to communicate one key message. I am respectable, married, and vaguely inconvenienced. You step into it like a dignified burrito, then spend 10 minutes adjusting it so the folds are perfect and the straps don't resemble unraveling scrolls. Then comes the palla, the large, flowing wrap that's part cloak, part veil, part heat-trapping nightmare. Draping it is an art form passed down from mother to daughter, usually through gritted teeth and passive-aggressive comments like, "Oh, I suppose that's one way to do it." The palla has no buttons, no zippers, just fabric, pins, and pain. It has to be arranged just so over your head and shoulder, loose enough to look effortless but tight enough not to fall into the wine jug. You wrap it like a Roman burrito with self-esteem. If done correctly, it says, "I'm modest, fashionable, and have not cried once today." If done poorly, it says, "Help, the laundry pile is attacking me." You stare at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror, less mirror, more slightly shiny guess. Your stola is creased, your palla is slipping, your hair is rebelling. You adjust everything again, aware that the entire outfit will slowly collapse the moment you move more than 3 feet. Why go through all this? Because Roman fashion isn't about comfort or practicality. It's about status. The more fabric you wear, the wealthier you must be. Because clearly, you can afford to trip over yourself in public. Minimalism, in Rome, is not a virtue. It's a cry for help. The colors matter too. You choose a soft violet stola today, which says cultured, pious, and likely to quote poetry at dinner. Red would be too bold. Green suggests fertility. You're not in the mood for questions. Blue is fashionable, but tricky to dye. Black is for mourning, and you only mourn lost sandals at this point. Your jewelry must be tasteful, which means it must look expensive, but not too expensive. Earrings, bracelets, perhaps a brooch shaped like something symbolic, a dove, peace, a fish, faith, or a snarling dog, your true inner spirit. Anything too shiny, and Lucilla will start whispering that your husband is embezzling from the temple fund again. Once dressed, you try to walk, slowly, gracefully, like a swan that knows its legs are tangled in drapes. The fabric rustles with every step, creating a gentle swishing sound that says, "Yes, I'm sweating, but in a ladylike way." You pass through the atrium, careful not to catch your palla on a statue. Again. You once got stuck to a bust of Cato for an entire afternoon and had to pretend it was on purpose. A performance piece, you claimed. Outside, the heat hits you like a philosophical debate. The sun reflects off your jewelry. Your sandals are already regretting their life choices. You grip your palla tighter as the wind makes an enthusiastic attempt to turn you into a human kite. A neighbor passes by in a blindingly white stola, embroidered with gold. You nod politely while mentally critiquing her hemline. It's too high. It's always too high. Probably a cry for help or attention or slightly better ventilation. By midday, the outfit has shifted 6 inches to the left, and you're using a hairpin to hold your palla together. Dignity is optional. The important thing is that you appear composed, even as a bee becomes entangled in your sleeve and threatens to turn your entire ensemble into a Greek tragedy. When you finally return home, you peel off the layers like a wilted onion. The stola clings to your knees. The palla has fused to your back with sweat and regret. You toss it aside with the casual grace of a woman who knows she'll have to do this all again tomorrow. Because in ancient Rome, fashion isn't just a statement. It's a full-body endurance test, a social chess match, and a highly flammable symbol of your place in the world. And all you really wanted was something with pockets. Congratulations. You're in labor. There's no anesthesia, no epidural, and your midwife is 93 years old and smells like camphor. The good news? You're a warrior now. The bad news? Your husband named the baby Cornutus. Childbirth in ancient Rome isn't an event, it's a trial by ordeal. Forget scented candles and gentle harp music. Your delivery suite is a dimly lit room filled with anxious relatives, superstitious whispers, and the faint smell of burnt herbs that were supposed to keep away evil spirits but mostly just made everyone sneeze. You're surrounded by your obstetrix, the midwife, and two assistants who have the combined medical knowledge of a salad. The midwife has seen it all. She's delivered dozens of babies, treated wounds from gladiator fights, and once wrestled a goat for medical purposes. She tells you to breathe like a goddess, which sounds poetic until you realize she means scream if you need to. The labor begins at dawn. Birds are chirping, the household gods are watching, and you're reconsidering every decision that led to this moment. The contractions hit hard and fast, and the midwife starts chanting prayers to Lucina, the goddess of childbirth. Someone lights incense. Someone else drops the incense. Smoke fills the room. It's chaos, but sacred chaos. Your husband is not in the room, of course. Roman men are brave enough to fight wars, but mysteriously allergic to women in labor. He's pacing outside, asking a slave for hourly updates, and occasionally offering deeply unhelpful advice like, try to relax. You fantasize about throwing a clay pot at him. The midwife checks your progress with the seriousness of a military general. Almost there, she lies. You grip the wooden bed frame like it owes you money. Sweat drips down your forehead. Your hair comes loose. Your stola, once a symbol of Roman dignity, is now a damp toga of despair. The household erupts into ritual. One servant sprinkles holy water. Another hangs amulets shaped like phalluses to ward off Malus Oculus, the evil eye. Your mother-in-law bursts in to offer advice, loudly quoting something about strong women giving birth standing up. You threaten to make that true by chasing her out of the room. Hours blur together. The midwife massages your belly with oil, muttering something about aligning the stars. The assistants fan you with palm leaves and shout encouragements like, "You're doing great and don't die." Very motivating. At one point you hear chanting from the courtyard. The family priest has joined in, waving a chicken feather over a brazier. You wonder if the chicken knows what it's being used for. You wonder if the gods even care. You wonder why every living thing in the room smells like goat. Then the moment. The midwife leans in, squints, and declares, "Now!" You push, scream, pray, and possibly curse several deities. There's more. Shouting, a blur of movement, and finally a sound. A tiny, shrill cry. You did it. The midwife triumphantly raises a slippery, squirming bundle like she's presenting it to Jupiter himself. "It's a boy," she announces. You laugh, cry, and immediately start worrying about how you're going to pay for tutors and sandals for the next 18 years. The baby is cleaned with warm olive oil, wrapped in linen, and laid on a small cushion beside you. He's red, wrinkled, and somehow already judging everyone. The midwife makes an offering to Lucina by placing a garland on the household altar. You silently promise the goddess an entire cow if you never have to do this again. Meanwhile, your husband bursts in like he's conquered Gaul. "Is it over?" he asks, heroically late. He peers at the baby, beams with pride, and immediately names him Cornutus, after his great-uncle, the one who accidentally set fire to his own toga during Saturnalia. You're too exhausted to object. The midwife begins her post-birth rituals, tying red wool around your wrist to keep away spirits, anointing your forehead with oil, and giving you a strong drink that tastes like wine, vinegar, and hope. You drink it anyway. It's not good, but it's earned. The family gathers to celebrate. Someone opens a jar of honey. Someone else plays the flute badly. Your mother-in-law insists on holding the baby while offering tips like, "Feed him wine, it builds character." You stare into the middle distance, smiling through the kind of exhaustion that could outlast empires. Later, as night falls and the house quiets, you lie in bed, aching but victorious. The baby snores softly beside you. The gods, apparently satisfied, leave you in peace for the moment. You did it. You've survived the Roman equivalent of a boss battle. Tomorrow, you'll be praised for your strength, your virtue, and your willingness to scream at divine beings. But tonight, you're just a woman with a newborn, and a profound respect for anyone who's ever done this twice. Because in ancient Rome, childbirth isn't just the start of life, it's proof you've already wrestled death and won. You're not just celibate. You're divinely celibate. You live in a temple, guard the sacred flame, and enjoy perks like front row seats at public games. But if you mess up, you're buried alive. So, high stakes. Welcome to the sacred and incredibly stressful life of a Vestal Virgin Rome's most respected, protected, and aggressively monitored religious figures. Chosen before puberty, usually around age 6 or 7, you were plucked from your family like a morally superior turnip and handed over to the goddess Vesta, who basically said, "You work for me now, forever, or until menopause, whichever comes first." Your job? Keep the sacred fire of Rome burning. That's not metaphorical, it's an actual fire. A real, literal, constantly needs tending fire inside the temple of Vesta. If it goes out, everyone panics, because it's seen as a sign that Rome itself is about to collapse. So no pressure, just civilization riding on your ability to keep wood dry and flames alive. You share your temple with a handful of other Vestals, all dressed in immaculate white robes and matching expressions of dignified exhaustion. Your hair is styled in 6 braids, symbolizing purity, or possibly just the number of hours it takes to maintain. You're trained in rituals, chants, fire maintenance, and the fine art of standing still for long periods while looking spiritually busy. There are perks. Oh, are there perks? You ride in chariots during festivals. You get the best seats at gladiator games, front row, shaded, and safely distant from any flying spleens. You have legal independence. That's right. In a society where most women can't sneeze without their husband's approval, you can own property, make contracts, and tell senators to move. Politely, of course. If you see a condemned prisoner on the way to execution, you can pardon him on the spot, just by accident of being sacred. You're like a walking, braids-wearing get-out-of-jail-free card. People step aside when you walk by. Literally, even the emperor bows. If someone harms you, they're usually executed on the spot, which is nice. Very motivating for your bodyguards. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. You must remain a virgin, not just in body, but in spirit, in rumor, and in anything that even vaguely smells like scandal. One false move, one suspicious glance at a handsome flute player, and suddenly the entire priesthood is side-eyeing you during morning prayers. And if you're really unlucky and someone accuses you of breaking your vow, well, you don't get a trial in the normal sense, because technically you've offended Vesta herself. And the goddess doesn't do courtrooms, she does burial. Yes, if found guilty of unchastity, you are ceremonially and ironically buried, alive in a specially constructed underground chamber, with a little bread, a little water, and a small oil lamp. Why not just execute you? Because spilling a Vestal's blood is taboo. So they bury you with supplies. So your death is totally natural. Everyone feels much better that way. Let's say you've avoided that fate, though. Good job. Now it's time to attend to your duties. You begin your day by tending the fire, sweeping the temple, and placing offerings of salt and flour into the sacred hearth. Tourists pass by, whispering reverently. You pretend not to hear them debate whether your robes are linen or cotton. It's wool, Susan. It's always wool. Later, you oversee the preparation of sacred items for public rituals. You keep sacred documents in the temple's archives. You guard Rome's most ancient objects, including the Palladium, a statue said to guarantee the city's survival, which you absolutely did not drop once during last year's thunderstorm. Definitely not. Occasionally, you take part in elaborate ceremonies where your presence alone ensures divine approval. You walk in processions, sprinkle holy water, and try very hard not to trip on your hem in front of 10,000 spectators. Because while you're sacred, you're also watched. Every move is noticed, every sigh interpreted, every frown possibly a prophecy. You're isolated, but revered, sheltered, but weighed down by an entire empire's expectations. It's like being a celebrity nun with diplomatic immunity and absolutely no dating life. Eventually, after 30 years of service, 10 years of training, 10 of performing, 10 of mentoring, you're released from duty. You can retire, marry, buy property, disappear into a quiet villa, and spend your days drinking watered wine and finally sleeping past sunrise. But most never do. After 30 years in Vesta's service, the world feels loud, chaotic, and far too full of people who don't understand the importance of maintaining a decent flame. So you stay close to the temple. You offer advice. You silently judge the new Vestals and their sloppy braiding techniques. Because being a Vestal virgin isn't just a job. It's a lifelong balancing act between divine grace and total annihilation. One eye on the fire, one eye on your reputation. And maybe, just maybe, one tiny hope that Vesta is in a good mood today. You live in a marble-clad villa, wear imported silks, and haven't cooked a meal in years. So why are you so bored you've started training a peacock to fetch grapes? Welcome to elite Roman woman ennui. You have everything. Statues in the atrium, fountains in the courtyard, mosaics so detailed they make your guests cry, and a personal harpist, whose only job is to softly pluck background music while you contemplate whether or not to rearrange your furniture for the third time this week. You don't even like the harp. It just fills the silence. Your husband is busy managing estates, attending the Senate, and giving long speeches about grain prices. You've stopped pretending to care. Every time he says, "provincial yield," your soul detaches from your body and floats briefly above the mosaic floor. So your days stretch before you like an endless toga flowing, elaborate, and slightly suffocating. You wake late, because why not, bathe in rose-scented water, and allow your slaves to dress you in fabrics worth more than most people's homes. Your jewelry clinks with every idle hand wave. You are beauty incarnate. You are also, somehow, spiritually melting. You pace the peristyle garden like a goddess trapped in a very luxurious birdcage. You've named every statue. You've started composing poems about your neighbor's poorly trimmed hedges. You've alphabetized your perfumes. Twice. You've even taken up hobbies. Embroidery lasted 3 days, painting 1 hour. Calligraphy nearly drove you to slap a tutor. You considered writing a philosophical treatise until you remembered. Women aren't supposed to write philosophical treatises. So you wrote it under a pseudonym, burned it for dramatic flair, and immediately missed it. The peacock, at least, provides some entertainment. His name is Augustus. He is entirely uninterested in grapes. You feed him anyway, imagining you're training him to deliver secret messages to exotic lovers, but really, he just pecks at his reflection and screams at shadows. At meals, you sit on cushions while people bring you things. Honey-glazed figs, delicately spiced lamb, dates stuffed with almonds. You've lost the ability to tell whether you're actually hungry or just trying to distract yourself from the crushing weight of elite Roman womanhood. You've hosted every kind of banquet. Musical evenings, poetry readings. Even that one time you hired a Greek philosopher to rant in the courtyard while people drank pomegranate wine and pretended to understand metaphysics. It was fun until he insulted your friend's nose shape and had to be escorted out with decorative spears. You've played every social game available: flattery, scandal, calculated charity. You've visited every bathhouse, bought every overpriced perfume, and dined with every person who matters. And still, the days stretch on. You begin inventing problems. Is the ceiling too symmetrical? Are the columns too smug? You convince yourself the mosaic of Neptune in the dining room is giving you judgmental looks. You redecorate. Again, this time with more marble. Your architect starts visibly aging. Your social circle, other elite matrons aren't much help. Flavia only wants to gossip about her husband's mistresses. Livia insists she saw a comet shaped like a fish, and now won't eat seafood. Lucilla has taken up pottery, and talks about creative clay flow as though it's a religion. You start attending temple rituals just for the drama. You time your entrance for maximum attention. You make overly generous donations and then pretend to be embarrassed by the applause. At one particularly slow ceremony, you pretend to faint just to spice things up. A priestess gives you side-eye. You don't care. By evening, you recline in your garden with a goblet of wine, watching the light fade over your imported shrubbery. Somewhere, a lyre plays. Somewhere else, A slave drops a dish and is immediately berated by someone else you barely remember hiring. You sigh. You are so bored, you are considering reading philosophy on purpose. Maybe Seneca, maybe Epictetus, maybe someone who tells you that suffering is noble and that boredom is the seed of wisdom. You hope they're wrong. You consider scandal just a little, a flirtation with a visiting poet, a whispered rumor, a mysterious absence followed by vague explanations. But you remember the stakes: exile, disgrace, maybe worse, and honestly, it sounds exhausting. So you settle for something safer. You write a diary, in Greek, about your dreams, your theories on the stars, and your ongoing war with the mosaic tiles in the guest bathroom. You call it Meditations on Marble and Men. You don't show anyone. Yet, because even in the most privileged corners of the empire, with silks, slaves, and singing birds, you can still feel trapped. Not by poverty or violence, but by time, by routine, by being expected to want for nothing, and yet still longing for something. You swirl your wine, raise a toast to the moon, and watch Augustus scream at a fern. Another day conquered. Sort of. Infidelity isn't just expected, it's practically an Olympic event. Your husband brings home a guest who's suspiciously familiar with the layout of your house. You smile, pour wine, and plot silently. Welcome to elite Roman marriage, where fidelity is optional, discretion is recommended, and double standards are wrapped in a nice toga. You, as the noble Roman wife, are expected to remain modest, pious, and devoted preferably while spinning wool and praying to Juno. Your husband, meanwhile, is expected to occasionally forget your name in a brothel. The woman he brings home tonight is just a friend from the theatre, which is Latin for, I met her backstage and she calls me sun god. She greets you with too many teeth and compliments your hairstyle in that tone women, reserved for rivals and overly friendly snakes. You compliment her sandals, knowing full well they went out of style 2 emperors ago. The two of them laugh a little too freely. She sits a little too close. You pour wine with the precision of a woman who's imagined doing this with poison. The servants say nothing, but their eyebrows are fluent in sarcasm. Your husband doesn't even try to hide it. Why should he? Roman society doesn't expect him to. He has rights, property, influence. You have dignitas, a vague concept of honor that keeps you from throwing figs at his face in public. You retire early, under the excuse of a headache, which is technically true, caused entirely by his new theatre friend. In the privacy of your chamber, you pace. You write angry poetry in your head. You mentally redecorate the atrium. Something dramatic, maybe involving a large, angry bust of Medea. But the next morning, you wake up, braid your hair, and do what Roman matrons have done for centuries. Carry on. Because you're not just a wife, you're a strategist, a social operator, a master of weaponized kindness. You greet the mistress again over breakfast. She compliments the eggs. You mention how your husband prefers them boiled, not fried. She laughs, a little too high-pitched. You smile serenely and sip your wine. You've read this script before. The truth is, mistresses are like storms. Inconvenient, loud, and eventually they move on to ruin someone else's villa. Some last longer than others. Some are clever. Some are devastatingly beautiful. A few even bring gifts. But you are the wife. You host the dinners. You manage the household. You make the sacrifices at the family altar and ensure that your children, his children, carry on the name. When the mistress forgets which cup is used for ritual wine, you remember. Some days you fantasize about revenge. Not dramatic revenge, just the kind that whispers through a room like sandalwood smoke. A subtle comment at a banquet. A misplaced invitation. A new friendship with someone slightly higher in status and slightly more interested in your husband's finances. Or perhaps you write letters. Beautiful, elegant, blisteringly polite letters, designed to travel through half the empire and leave just enough ambiguity to spark a dozen rumors. You've learned from the best. Roman matrons don't need swords. They have salons. They have alliances. They have the sharpest weapons of all, memory and social calendars. And besides, you know something your husband doesn't. Eventually, mistresses get bored, or greedy, or bold, and Roman society has a strict expiration date for women who overstep. One day, she'll say something too clever, wear something too sheer, or touch something sacred without knowing. When that day comes, you'll be ready with a subtle smile, a soft-spoken complaint to the right official, or just the well-timed visit from your extremely devout cousin who thinks everything is a scandal waiting to happen. And if not, that's fine too, because you've learned the ancient Roman art of endurance, of walking through storms with your hair still pinned, of turning betrayal into poetry and disappointment into perfectly arranged fruit bowls. So tonight, when your husband stumbles in smelling like perfume and poor choices, you help him remove his sandals. You tuck him into bed. You don't say a word. Not because you're defeated, but because you're planning. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you host another dinner. You wear a gown that makes senators forget their speeches. You make a toast that draws polite laughter and veiled threats. You raise your children. You whisper prayers. You maintain dignitas like it's a divine flame. Because in Rome, the mistress may have the moment, but the wife holds the legacy. He's gone. Finally. You wear mourning robes, give the proper wailing performance, and then quietly begin planning the rest of your life, one that hopefully involves fewer toga lectures and more wine. It's not that you didn't love him. It's just that after years of political dinners, predictable infidelities, and being compared unfavorably to statues of mythical women, you're tired. Roman marriage is many things, but romantic isn't high on the list. And now that he's shuffled off this mortal domus, you are officially a vidua, a Roman widow. First, the mourning. You must wear pulley draping, somber black garments that make you look like a fashionable shadow. Your jewelry? Put away. Your hair? Unstyled. Your posture? Extra tragic. You're not just sad, you're a living monument to dignified despair. You hire professional mourners to wail in the street, not because you need the noise, but because your neighbors expect it. Nothing says respectable grief like 12 women screaming on your doorstep. Then comes the funeral procession. A grand affair with torches, incense, and a suspiciously cheerful flute player. Your husband's wax death mask is carried on a pillow like a creepy party guest, and his body is paraded through the streets while you follow, veiled and solemn, trying not to trip on your hem, or make eye contact with that one senator who once flirted with you during Saturnalia. He's cremated, as tradition dictates, and his ashes placed in a family tomb. Someone reads a eulogy. Someone else quotes Virgil. You drop the ceremonial coin into his hand and resist the urge to whisper, "You won't be needing this where you're going." Once the formalities are over, the real phase begins. Strategic grieving. You are now in an elite and surprisingly flexible social category. A widow in Rome is not a helpless figure clutching rosaries. She's a woman with options, land rights, and a new lease on life. You can own property outright. You can run estates. You can host your own parties without some toga-clad husband reminding everyone he used to debate Cicero. But you have to play it smart. Too much joy, too soon, and people start talking. Didn't she look too refreshed at the funeral? Was that a smile at the bakery? I heard she's already rearranging the atrium. The gossip is instant, brutal, and always accompanied by dramatic eyebrow raises. So you wait. You pretend to be devastated just a little longer than necessary. You talk about how empty the villa feels, how quiet the nights are without his deeply nasal snoring. You host modest, tasteful luncheons with extra olives and slightly more wine than decorum requires. And when the mourning period ends, oh, the freedom. No more. Husband barging in to explain military tactics using the salt jars. No more dinners spent listening to economic forecasts delivered with the confidence of a man who couldn't find his sandals without help. No more awkward small talk with his mistress during Saturnalia. Now, it's just you and your choices. You might remarry. That's always on the table. You're still youngish, attractive-ish, and wealthy very. Roman men love a rich widow. They'll come calling with poetry, gifts, and compliments, so practiced you could set them to a metronome. You nod politely, and imagine a life of shared estates and joint headaches. Or you might not remarry. You might decide that once was enough. You've done your part for Rome's marriage machine. Maybe now you just want peace. A nice villa in the countryside. And a dog that doesn't mansplain aqueducts. You spend time rediscovering yourself. You read. You write. You attend temple more out of habit than hope. You visit friends. You take over managing the household without someone second-guessing your olive oil budget. There's a quiet strength in widowhood that no one tells you about, because beneath the layers of black fabric and polite mourning rituals, there's a fire, the knowledge that you've endured. You've survived love, duty, childbirth, betrayal, parties, politics, and probably food poisoning at least twice. You've played the role, smiled through it, and now you can be whatever you want to be. People may still whisper, of course. They'll wonder what you'll do next, who you'll entertain, whether you ever really cried when he died. Let them. You refill your wine, raise a toast to the empty chair at the table, and say, he would have wanted me to be happy. Even if what he actually would have wanted was to haunt the villa and rearrange the scrolls. Let him try. You've seen worse. You're a Roman widow now, and that means for the first time in a long time you belong to yourself. Forget silk and philosophy. You're a plebeian woman, and your day begins at dawn with laundry and ends with sweeping vomit from the tavern floor. Your back hurts, your feet hurt, your soul is on strike. There is no marble in your atrium, no fountains, no hired mourners waiting in the wings. Just a tiny, overstuffed insular apartment where the ceiling leaks and the neighbors fight through the walls. Your mattress is a sack of straw. Your pillow is a rolled-up tunic. Luxury by local standards. You wake up before the sun because the sun doesn't need to heat water, scrub tunics, or herd screaming toddlers toward a communal latrine. You do. The fire is long dead, so you start your morning shivering while coaxing a flame from a pile of damp sticks and last week's wine receipts. Breakfast? A crust of bread so stale it doubles as a doorstop. If you're lucky, there's a smear of olive paste to go with it. If you're really lucky, no rats have chewed through your grain storage again. You eat standing up, already mentally juggling the day's disasters. You have children, at least 3, possibly 4. It's hard to remember when they all look like miniature versions of your exhausted face. One of them has worms. Another has a rock collection and a suspicious cough. You send them off to beg, fetch water, or run errands, and pray to any god still listening that they don't end up sold, stolen, or sneezing on a senator. Your husband or partner, or neighbor, you occasionally yell at left early for the docks, or the market, or to avoid helping. His job involves yelling, lifting, or losing money at dice, and your job involves picking up the pieces when he gets home, grumbling about taxes and mysterious bruises. You work too. Of course you do. This is Rome, not a vacation. Maybe you're a washerwoman, scrubbing strangers' tunics in the Tiber until your fingers wrinkle, and your back feels like it's made of vinegar-soaked bricks. Maybe you sell bread, fish, or charms at the market. Maybe you clean taverns after everyone else has passed out, wielding a broom like a jaded gladiator. Your clothes are functional. Your hair is tied back with a piece of string that used to be your shoelace. Your shoes are one sneeze away from becoming sandals. You smell like smoke, sweat, and survival. Lunch is whatever's left over from breakfast, plus a little boiled barley if someone paid you recently. If not, there's always turnips, or turnip soup, or turnip stew. You've started dreaming about turnips in ways that make you feel emotionally compromised. By midday, you've already solved 3 arguments, bandaged 2 scraped knees, and chased off a goat that definitely did not belong to you. The laundry still isn't dry. The dog's stolen your only spoon. The neighbors are having another shouting match over whose cousin is more cursed. You pretend not to listen while taking mental notes. You visit the public fountain to fetch water, dodging gossip and flying elbows. Someone's daughter is getting married. Someone else's son joined a cult. You mutter polite things. refill your jug, and head home before the local teenagers start hurling figs again. Dinner is flatbread, stew, and that weird root vegetable you're still not sure is edible. You eat with your fingers, seated on a crate, while trying to ignore the fact that your table wobbles and the ceiling just dropped another chunk of plaster into your lentils. After dinner, you clean. Of course. Because nothing says relaxation like scrubbing your own floor with a rag that used to be your wedding tunic. The tavern next door has erupted into chaos, so your night ends sweeping up wine, shame, and a suspiciously toothless customer. At last, you collapse onto your straw mattress, your body a patchwork of aches and mystery bruises. Your children are asleep, one drooling on your arm, the other using your foot as a pillow. The fire's dying again. You don't care. You're too tired to move. You stare at the ceiling, listening to the rats above, the drunks below, and the occasional scream in the distance, probably just someone losing at dice. Or winning. Hard to tell. But somehow, you're still here. Still alive. Still fighting through every turnip-flavoured, sweat-soaked, sleep-deprived day with the kind of resilience only Rome or maybe motherhood can forge. You don't have riches, power, or peace, but you have grit and spite and the ability to wake up tomorrow and do it all again without screaming, probably, unless the ceiling caves in. Then all bets are off. You've got front row seats and a crush on a guy named Gaius with biceps like marble. You scream, you cry, you throw him a garland. He catches it, you faint. True love in the blood-soaked sand. Welcome to the gladiatorial games, where violence meets romance and bloodlust wears eyeliner. You're not here for politics or piety. You're here for entertainment, for spectacle, for a man who looks like a god but grunts like a boar. Your heart belongs not to senators or poets, but to sweaty, sword-swinging men with a 1 in 5 chance of surviving the day. As a Roman woman, especially one with money, you're not supposed to care this much. You're supposed to be demure, composed, more focused on embroidery than on chest muscles you could sculpt cheese on. But the arena doesn't care. The arena is chaos, and in chaos, social rules loosen just enough for you to shout things like, "Take him down, Gaius," without anyone blinking. You've been planning this outing for days. Your hair is styled in victory braids. Your stola is pressed. Your makeup includes just enough lead-based foundation to make your cheeks glow like divine vengeance. You bring a flower garland, a hand fan, and 3 friends equally obsessed with different gladiators. You arrive early to get the good seats. You're a matrona after all, and women of status get ringside views, just far enough from the placed blood spray, but close enough to see the way Gaius glistens under the midday sun like an olive-oiled statue of Mars. The crowd roars, drums pound, the gates open, and there he is, Gaius, your not-so-secret crush and part-time heartthrob, full-time murder machine. He raises his trident, salutes the emperor, and winks. You black out for 3 seconds. He's fighting some guy from Gaul with a terrifying mustache and a club that looks like it was carved from a tree struck by Jupiter himself. Gaius dodges, spins, lunges. You forget to breathe. Someone behind you spills wine. You don't notice. Women all around you are equally unhinged. Some are throwing favors, scarves, rings, even love notes written in terrible Latin. One woman tries to toss a shoe and hits a senator in the face. No one apologizes. You scream louder, because in this arena, you're not just a citizen. You're a fan, a follower, a gladiator groupie. And Rome makes no apology for this strange, steamy corner of its culture. Gladiators are slaves, criminals, and war captives, but they're also celebrities. Their names are scratched into walls. Their faces appear on pottery. Some women dream of running away with them. Others already have. You know at least one senator's wife who, accidentally, adopted a retired gladiator as her personal trainer. Of course, actual relationships are frowned upon. You're technically above them in every way. Socially, legally, hygienically, but desire doesn't care about class hierarchy, especially when it has abs. The match ends. Gaius wins. Barely. He limps but lifts his arms in triumph. The crowd screams. You scream. You launch your garland into the arena. He catches it with one blood-slicked hand and raises it to his lips. You ascend into the heavens. Later, you write his name on a wax tablet inside a heart. You doodle a tiny helmet next to it. You hide it in your satchel so your mother-in-law won't find it, and lecture you about moral decay and proper, matronly interests like spinning wool and resenting foreigners. You think about Gaius when you're at temple. You think about him when you're bathing. You write terrible poetry about him that you recite to your friend Julia, who insists her gladiator crush, Marcus the Mamillo, is clearly superior. You argue, loudly, over wine. You know this fantasy has an expiration date. Gladiators don't live long. They're entertainment wrapped in armor and tragedy. And even if Gaius did survive long enough to retire, marry, and settle down, society would never approve. Not officially, but still, there's something thrilling about it. About seeing someone who risks death every day, who faces lions, blades, and hecklers, and still turns to wink at you. About cheering for something wild, raw, and absolutely against every social norm you've ever been taught. So you go back to the arena. Again and again. You scream his name until your voice cracks. You throw more garlands. You pray to Venus, Mars, and anyone else listening. Just let him survive. Just one more match, one more wink, one more impossible day of love and blood in the sand. Because you may be a Roman matron with duties, respectability, and an embroidered neckline, but in the amphitheater, you're just another woman with gladiator fever. And it is incurable. You need to go. Unfortunately, so do 50 other people. Roman public toilets are social events with no privacy, endless chatter, and a communal sponge. You wonder if the gods are punishing you. Welcome to the latrina, Rome's gift to group suffering. Public toilets aren't hidden in back alleys or marked by polite signs. They're full-scale, stone-built experiences, lined up like a marble chorus of judgment, perched over running water that you desperately hope is flowing in the right direction. You arrive with low expectations and are still disappointed. First, the smell hits you. It's like someone tried to ferment a cabbage inside a goat and left the result out in the Sunday. You breathe through your mouth and immediately regret it. The air is thick with humidity, gossip, and the unmistakable whiff of regrets past. You find an open spot stone seat, smooth from years of other people's behinds, with a neatly carved keyhole in the top. There are no dividers, no stalls, no privacy. You sit next to a woman you vaguely recognize from the bakery. She nods at you like this is completely normal. Because it is. This is not a solo journey. This is a community gathering. Everyone's doing their business while discussing market prices, politics, family dramas, and whether that one senator's new wig is fooling anyone. You can't focus. Someone's singing. Someone else is yelling at her kid who's trying to fish coins out of the drainage channel. A woman 3 seats down is loudly arguing with herself over whether her husband's new slave is too friendly. And through it all the sponge looms. Ah yes, the torsorium, a communal cleaning device that is, by all logic, the worst idea in human history. A sea sponge attached to a stick, resting in a trough of vinegar water. Everyone uses it. No one trusts it. You eye it like it's a wild animal that might bite. You're not sure which is worse, using it or being judged for not using it. The woman beside you notices your hesitation and offers some advice. Just don't think about it, and go from left to right. You briefly contemplate time travel, forward or backward, anywhere but here. Toilets are gendered in theory, but not always in practice. Sometimes the women's latrine is full, and the overflow ends up in the men's section, leading to awkward nods and a lot of unnecessary eye contact. You once sat next to a gladiator in training who offered you a date fruit mid-squat. You declined. You glance at the floor stone, slightly sloped, constantly damp, and home to whatever didn't make it into the channel. You lift your sandals onto your toes, trying not to think about what's seeping into the leather. Hygiene, you remind yourself, is a dream, like indoor plumbing or husbands who do chores. Above you, There's a small opening in the wall to let in light and fresh air. It accomplishes neither. You spot an old woman with a basket selling perfumed cloths and mint sprigs for the nose. You buy one out of desperation and hold it to your face like a dying heroine in a tragic play. She nods approvingly and offers you a second one, on the house. You finish your business with as much dignity as possible, which is very little. Now, the exit strategy. You rise, smooth your stola, and glance at the sponge again. You opt for a cloth you brought from home. You are not a savage. You discard it into the trench with the kind of cold detachment only a Roman woman can muster. The gods will forgive you, you hope. You make your way to the wash basin, which is a shallow bowl of slightly murky water being steadily splashed by at least 3 children who have never once washed their hands. You give it a courtesy rinse and thank Minerva you're done. Almost. Because the woman from the bakery follows you out, still mid-story about her cousin's mysterious rash. You walk side by side down the street, realizing that today's toilet trip has bonded you for life. She'll wave to you tomorrow. She'll sit next to you again. You are now toilet friends. It is a special bond. Back home you strip off your sandals, scrub your hands, your feet, your soul. You consider a bath, a prayer, and possibly a cleansing ritual involving fire. But for now, you pour wine, stare into the middle distance, and whisper a simple truth. Public toilets are hell. But hey, at least you didn't drop your ring into the channel this time. Progress. You light a lamp and whisper a prayer because your neighbor swears she saw a ghost in her kitchen. Roman superstition is alive, well, and currently hiding under your bed. And honestly, you believe her, because this is Rome, where the gods are moody, the dead are nosy, and you're never more than 10 steps away from something haunted, cursed, or vaguely slimy. People around here don't sleep because it's peaceful. They sleep because they're too exhausted to argue with invisible forces. Your own house creaks more than usual tonight. Is it the wind? A mouse? Or the spirit of that one uncle who died after saying Juno had bad taste in clouds? You're not taking chances. You place a protective amulet above the door and a small bowl of salt in the corner, just in case. Your bedroom shrine gets extra attention. You light more incense than is strictly fire-safe and whisper offerings to the household gods, the Lares and Penates, because while they're usually chill, they've been known to throw spiritual tantrums when ignored. One woman down the street forgot to leave out cake last month. Her chickens haven't laid a single egg since. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, every creak a potential omen. Earlier, you found a dead bird on the doorstep. Could be nothing. Could be a message. Or a really bad delivery. You're not ruling anything out. Outside, dogs are howling. The moon is full. The neighbors are arguing again. This time about a cursed ring, a haunted jug, and whether or not their son is possessed or just terrible. You press a pillow over your ears and try to remember whether you made the proper offering at the last Parentalia festival. Did you light 2 candles? Or just 1? Did you say the names in the right order? Did you forget that one cousin who always stole olives? Because Roman ghosts are not like modern ghosts who float politely through walls and maybe knock over a vase. Roman ghosts' lemures are vengeful, petty, and have an excellent memory. You forget their birthday once, and suddenly your hair won't stay curled and your door keeps opening at 3 a.m. You remember the story of Lucilla, who said her dreams were haunted by the ghost of her ex-husband. She swore he rattled her chamber pot, criticized her cooking, and muttered passive-aggressive comments through the curtain. She hired a priest, burned sulfur, and screamed at the air until something left, or gave up. It's unclear. Your own dreams aren't much better. You keep having that one where a chicken speaks in Latin and tells you your stola is cursed. It's always the same chicken, always the same curse. You've started sleeping with a sprig of rosemary under your pillow, which helps slightly but makes everything smell like stew. Superstition doesn't stop at ghosts. There are curses, hexes, and aggressive prayers. Love spells made from hair, protection charms made from oddly shaped rocks. That one amulet your friend swears works because she buried it during a lightning storm while fasting and yelling at a tree. And don't get started on the Defiction's curse tablets. People are always scratching angry wishes onto bits of lead, folding them up, and, chucking them into wells. You once found one in the market fountain. It said, "May whoever stole my sandals be bitten by 1,000 fleas and lose all their teeth." Honestly, understandable. By midnight, you've mentally reviewed every possible offense you could have made to gods, spirits, neighbors, or birds. You say a little extra prayer to Hecate, just to be safe. You toss a coin out the window for Mercury. You blow a kiss toward the ceiling in case any ancestors are hovering. Sleep flirts with you but never commits. Every shadow looks guilty. Every draft feels personal. The lamp flickers dramatically. You consider getting up to relight the incense, but remember that one time you caught your sleeve on fire and decide the ghosts can wait. Eventually you drift off clutching your amulet, breathing in rosemary fumes, and whispering apologies to every spirit within earshot. Because in ancient Rome, bedtime isn't about unwinding. It's about survival. Emotional, spiritual, and, occasionally, pyromaniacal. And if you wake up with a new wrinkle, a missing spoon, or a suspicious dream about a bleeding olive tree, it's not a coincidence. It's Tuesday, and the dead are just very involved. She knows everything. Your moods, your secrets, your wine preference. She dresses you, gossips with you, and maybe plots your downfall. She is both your closest companion and your greatest liability. She is your ancilla, your personal female slave, and she has been in your life longer than most of your extended family. She knows where you hide your best earrings. She knows which cousin you can't stand. She's seen you cry, sweat, scheme, laugh, and throw a sandal at your husband. And she will never, ever forget it. She wakes you in the morning with gentle hands and an expression that says, "You look tired, but I won't say it out loud unless you make me." She brushes your hair, helps you into your layers of modesty, pins your stola in place, and hums the same half-finished song every single day. You don't know if she ever learned the ending or if she's just doing it to annoy you. Either way, it's comforting. You eat breakfast while she stands in the corner, quietly judging your toast choices. She doesn't say anything about the extra honey yet, but her eyebrows twitch in a way that implies she has thoughts. When you ask her what the plan for the day is, she reminds you what the plan is. Because somehow, she's memorized your calendar better than you have. And yes, she gossips. Not with you necessarily, but near you. Just loudly enough that you hear every scandal about the senator's daughter, the fishmonger's affair, and the baker's attempt at poetry. You pretend not to listen. She pretends she doesn't notice. This is the delicate dance you do, day after day. But make no mistake, she is always listening, always watching. She knows who came to visit while your husband was away. She knows what letter you burned in the hearth at midnight. She knows which gods you forgot to thank, and which ones you muttered curses at when the bread burned. She holds your secrets like a priestess, and sometimes she uses them. Because being a Roman slave, especially a household one, especially a female one, means living in the tension between powerlessness and influence. She can't legally own property, vote, or marry. But she can ruin your social standing with a whisper. And in a world where reputation is currency, that makes her rich in ways no coin purse can match. You try to keep her happy. You give her the nicer tunics, the better sandals, a bit of perfume when you can. You speak kindly in public, offer praise when appropriate, and never, ever yell at her in front of other people. Because if you do, she will remember, and you will pay for it. Of course, she's not just a threat. She's your emotional support human, your living diary, your crisis manager. When your dress tears 5 minutes before dinner with a senator's wife, she saves it with 2 pins and a glare. When you're crying over something your mother-in-law said, she pretends not to notice until you ask, and then hands you a honey cake and says, "Well, she's mostly bones and opinions anyway." And gods help anyone who crosses you, because for all her sass, her loyalty when earned is ferocious. She has sharp elbows, sharper words, and the ability to make guests feel like unwelcome centipedes with a single look. She is your ally, your alibi, your accidental assassin of social climbers. But the power dynamic is always there, hanging over every compliment, every joke, every shared sip of wine. You own her, legally, completely, and she could be sold, punished, or replaced at your whim. You both know this. It doesn't make it easier. Some nights, when the wine flows and the lamps burn low, you wonder what she dreams about. Freedom? Revenge? A life where she wakes when she wants, wears what she likes, and gossips about you, from the outside instead of the inside. You never ask. And she never says. Because this is Rome. And in Rome, women are always navigating cages, some just have better views. So tomorrow, she'll wake you again. She'll help you dress, fix your hair, and tell you that you don't really look tired, just thoughtful. She'll roll her eyes at your husband's jokes and quietly correct your schedule when you forget your cousin's birthday, and you'll both pretend that things are simple. Even though you know deep down that she could unravel your entire life with just a few well-placed words, and yet you still trust her. Because, God's help you, you don't know how to live without her. You want out. He wants your dowry. The divorce is public, messy, and surprisingly fast. You walk away with your dignity, your fortune, and a very satisfying hair toss. Welcome to Roman divorce. Equal parts legal procedure, emotional battlefield, and neighborhood theater. In a society where women can't vote but can serve divorce papers while still holding a wine goblet, you've decided enough is enough. No more toga lectures. No more surprise mistresses. No more discussions about aqueduct pressure during dinner. You've reached your limit. And now it's time to do the Roman thing and leave with flair. The process, mercifully, is simple. No need for a judge. No need for a 27-scroll legal dissertation. Just a few witnesses, a declaration of intent, and a packed bag. I divorce you, you say, or more accurately, you send a servant to say it for you, because why waste eyeliner on a man who forgets anniversaries and your name during public introductions? Still, simplicity doesn't mean dignity. The news spreads faster than the plague in a crowded bathhouse. Within hours, your neighbor is peeking over her laundry, your cousins are suddenly invested in your love life, and your ex-husband's brother is trying to check in on you with an close, unusually timed visit and 2 jugs of wine. You ignore them, because step 1 of Roman divorce isn't filing paperwork. It's managing the spectacle. There's no hiding it. Divorce in Rome is like shouting fire in a crowded Senate. Everyone stops to watch. Some root for you, others predict doom. Your mother-in-law sends a note quoting ancient moralists and conveniently forgets how her own first marriage ended badly, and with crockery involved. Your friends take sides. Julia says you should have left months ago. Flavia says he wasn't that bad. You stop inviting Flavia to things. And then there's the dowry. Oh, the glorious, glittering dowry you brought into the marriage land. Jewelry, cash, 2 really good amphorae, and the rights to 1 olive grove that's been in your family since the Punic Wars. He wants to keep it. You want to keep your sanity and your olives. Legally, you're entitled to get it all back, unless he can prove you ruined the marriage. So now he's trying to paint you as difficult, which is ironic, considering he's the one who once tried to build a shrine to his favorite gladiator in the garden. You bring receipts, figurative ones and literal ones, scrolls, statements, witnesses who saw his late-night philosophy discussions with that flute player. You are calm, collected, and dressed in a stola so sharp it could cut marble. The statement is clear. You will not be blamed for his midlife crisis. Soon enough, it's done. The papers are delivered. The household divided. The furniture argued over. You take the dog. He keeps the vomitorium, which feels poetic. And now, you're free. Free to return to your family home if you wish. Or stay in your villa, if the terms allow. Free to wear what you want, say what you mean, and decorate the atrium without consulting someone whose interior design sense peaked with, "Let's put a spear there." You host a post-divorce dinner, not out of spite of course, but because the new cushions arrived and you need people to see them. Your ex is not invited. The wine flows. The women toast your escape. Even the slaves look relieved. You don't mourn the end. You've already mourned the middle, those years of silence. The dinner's filled with nothing but the sound of chewing and judgment. The passive-aggressive temple offerings. Now, You plan your next chapter. You could remarry. You're still youngish, attractive-ish, and importantly, wealthy. Suitors are circling already, some sincere, some sniffing for a payout. One even writes you a poem. It rhymes Venus with penis. You do not respond. Or maybe you won't marry again. Maybe you'll live alone with your dog, your olives, and your copy of Ovid's Ars Amatoria. Maybe you'll travel, open a bathhouse, or start a salon where women gather to complain and plot, like a Roman version of brunch. Because divorce in Rome isn't shameful. It's a pivot, a power move. A reminder that Roman women may be barred from politics, but by Jupiter, they are absolute masters of the personal reset. So tonight, you go to bed alone. And it is glorious. No snoring. No opinions about olive prices. Just you, your freedom, and the lingering scent of victory. And tomorrow, you wake up not as someone's wife, but as someone's problem. And frankly, that's much more fun. You lock eyes with a handsome stranger over a sacrificial goat. It's awkward, it's dusty, and it's technically blasphemous. But he smiles. You smile. The priest coughs loudly. This is Rome, and even flirtation is complicated, especially at a temple, especially when there's entrails involved. You weren't planning on meeting someone. You came to offer thanks to Venus, goddess of love, beauty, and extremely mixed signals. You even wore your nice stola, the one with the embroidery that says, "I'm pious, but I also have ankles." You brought incense, a coin for the offering box, and the mild hope that Venus would bless your week with fewer arguments and maybe one tolerably attractive man. Instead, you got him. He's tall, tan, and smells like myrrh and ambition. You catch him mid-kneel in front of the altar, hands clasped, lips moving in prayer or possibly trying to remember the words. You're not sure if he's praying for love, money, or an easier tax collector. Honestly, it doesn't matter. His tunic fits, his beard is symmetrical, and he hasn't once referred to women as emotional property. You're intrigued. He notices your gaze and smiles a slow, deliberate thing that says, "I know exactly what I'm doing, and I've probably done it in at least 2 provinces." You raise an eyebrow. He looks away, then looks back. It's a silent battle of wills and lashes. And then, the goat bleats. Right, the sacrificial goat. It stands between you, chewing grass and exuding a vibe of total disapproval. A priest is mid-ritual, muttering something about omens and purity while waving a blade. You both try to look solemn. You fail. You're supposed to focus on the ritual, not on his hands, not on the way he adjusts his belt, not on the way he catches your glance again and smirks like he's just won something. The priest pauses, glares, coughs, loudly. You snap your eyes back to the altar and offer Venus a hasty apology. You are not here to flirt. You are here to honor the goddess of love, which, now that you think about it, probably includes a bit of discreet flirtation, right? Surely Venus herself enjoyed a little eye contact over a burning goat. But temple flirting is delicate, too bold, and you risk divine wrath. Too subtle, and he'll assume you're just squinting at the fresco. There are rules to this game, none of them written, all of them enforced by gossip and divine lightning. So you make your move. After the ritual ends, you linger near the statue, admiring the craftsmanship and pretending not to notice that he's also pretending not to notice you. You adjust your pallor just enough to reveal a strategically bared shoulder, modest but with intent. He approaches. "Beautiful weather for a blessing," he says. You nod. "Almost as beautiful as the goat." He laughs. "It's warm, real." You think, maybe this is how Venus works through bad lines and sacrificial livestock. You talk, briefly and carefully, about the temple, the festival coming up, and which deity is the most fun to worship when mildly drunk. You do not mention your mother-in-law, your ex-husband, or the rash you got from that one cursed tunic. It's all light, polite, and socially appropriate, but the sparks are undeniable. He mentions he's a merchant, or a minor official, or maybe both. You forget the details immediately because you're too distracted by the way he says auspices like it's a compliment. He asks about your family. You lie and say they're tolerable. The conversation is going well, too well, which is when the augur passes by, stares directly at the two of you, and says, "Be careful." Venus listens when you least expect it. You both freeze, smile awkwardly, pretend you were discussing grain prices. He bows. "Perhaps we'll meet again at the festival?" You smile. "Perhaps we'll pretend not to recognize each other in front of the Vestals." He laughs again. The priest watches him leave like he's already planning to report him to Jupiter. You remain a few moments longer, offering a final prayer not for romance, but for discretion. Because temple gossip spreads faster than wildfire, and twice as hot. By the time you get home, at least 2 people will claim you were seen whispering sweet nothings into a marble column. Still, as you walk back through the forum, you feel lighter, giddy, even. Not because of love gods, no, but because you flirted in a temple and didn't get struck by lightning. And in Rome, that's basically a miracle. So you tuck a flower behind your ear, whisper a thank you to Venus, and keep walking. Because if love is a battlefield, temple flirting is the tightrope walk over lava version, and you, dear Roman woman, just nailed the landing. It's Rome's wildest festival. Slaves become masters, rules disappear, and wine flows like the Tiber in spring. You laugh, you dance, you regret everything by dawn. Welcome to Saturnalia, the holiday that makes the rest of Roman life look like a strict nun's retreat. It's a week-long celebration of chaos, misrule, gift-giving, questionable decisions, and finding out just how badly your household staff can roast you when given the legal right to do so. It begins innocently enough. You light a candle to Saturn, the god of agriculture, liberation, and evidently late-night poor choices. Everyone wears the pileus, a soft, cone-shaped hat that screams, "I'm festive and I've lost control of my life." Even your husband puts on one and declares that today he will help serve dinner, which sounds sweet until he sets a tray on fire. Roles are reversed. The social order dissolves like cheap soap in a hot bath. For one glorious, unhinged stretch of days, slaves become masters. And you, a respectable Roman matrona, are now taking orders from your hairdresser, who is currently reclining on a couch and demanding more olives, with feeling. You nod, you serve, you try not to snap, because this is tradition. This is freedom, Roman style, temporary, chaotic, and very, very loud. Your house, once orderly and dignified, is now a festival zone. Laurel branches decorate the walls. Someone replaced the water in the fountain with watered wine. The dog is wearing a toga. You're not sure who dressed it, but you have questions and 0 answers. Your kitchen is a war zone. The cook, technically your master for the day, is singing obscene songs while setting fire to something that once resembled a goose. Smoke is pouring from the oven. Nobody is concerned. Gifts are exchanged. And the goal is not luxury but absurdity. You receive a carved fig in the shape of a foot, a poem that is probably insulting you in hexameter, and a sponge on a stick with a ribbon on it. You pretend to laugh. You're 60% sure that last one was a dig about your bathroom habits. The games begin. Drinking contests, dice games, riddles that make no sense, but somehow end with you owing someone a new cloak. Everyone is shouting. Everyone is dancing. Someone is playing a flute with their nose. You don't ask how or why. You just pass the wine. Saturnalia is also a great equalizer. That senator who sneered at your table arrangements last month? He's now covered in honey and being pelted with nuts by children in tunics. You watch. You sip. You feel a tiny bloom of joy in your soul. As the evening continues, things begin to blur. One minute you're laughing with your sister-in-law, the next you're part of a conga line led by a man who insists he's the reincarnation of Bacchus and who might actually be your neighbor Flavius with a branch in his hair. You dance, you sing, you loudly demand someone bring you more mulsum, that delicious wine-honey blend that tastes like happiness and feels like a punch to the liver. Someone does. You drink it. You instantly regret it. By midnight, Everyone's either crying, napping, or debating whether Pluto is hot or just misunderstood. You find yourself hiding behind a curtain, clutching a half-eaten cake, and avoiding eye contact with a guest who just challenged the household statue to a wrestling match. You remember you were once a respectable woman. You remember dignity, barely, and yet you're also having fun. The kind that comes from completely letting go of the relentless expectations, the social hierarchy, the endless duties. Here, in this mad festival of reversed roles and overturned rules, you can laugh too loud, eat too much, and be exactly as ridiculous as everyone else. Tomorrow, it will all return to normal. The slaves will serve again. The decorum will reappear. The toga will come back out of its wine-stained corner. The respectable Matrona mask will be dusted off and reapplied. But tonight you are a creature of Saturnalia. And that means freedom. Messy, delicious, temporary freedom. The kind of freedom where everyone forgets who's in charge and just focuses on whether there's any fig cake left and why the goat is in the atrium again. So you raise a cup. You toast the chaos. You try not to step on anyone snoring on the floor, because tomorrow will be full of shame, hangovers, and possibly ritual apology. But tonight, Rome belongs to the mad, the merry, and the woman in the corner who just convinced a senator to juggle bread loaves. And yes, that woman is you. You've survived it all. The husbands, the hairpins, the haunted toilets. Now you sip wine from your countryside villa and mutter passive-aggressive prayers for everyone who ever wronged you. You've earned this. Welcome to Roman retirement if you're lucky, rich, and still possess all your teeth. After a life of managing households, dodging gossip, enduring Saturnalia hangovers, and hosting senators who couldn't remember your name, you now live among grapevines, birdsong, and the occasional peasant with bad timing. Your villa is not enormous, but it is tasteful. Marble columns, a trickling fountain, and enough space between you and the neighbors that you can scream into the olive trees when the memories hit too hard. The air smells like rosemary, sun-baked stone, and the sweet, sweet aroma of not having to care anymore. Your mornings begin with silence. No screaming children, no barking slaves, no cursed kitchen fires. Just you, your cup of watered wine, and the satisfaction of knowing you never have to plan another banquet for your husband's political ambitions ever again. Because your husband? He's either dead, remarried, or still sulking after the divorce you, orchestrated with surgical precision. You stroll through your garden wearing sandals that don't match and a robe that implies you've forgotten what tailoring is. You no longer dress to impress. You dress to repel. Anyone who shows up uninvited is immediately greeted by you in your "don't talk to me unless you brought figs" attire. Retirement is less about peace and more about power. Quiet power. The kind you wield with raised eyebrows and perfectly timed pauses. You've become the local legend. Children whisper stories about you. She once stabbed a suitor with a hairpin, they say. You didn't, but you could have. Your estate runs smoothly, thanks to your carefully selected staff. You've kept one or two of your oldest slaves, not because you need them, but because they still know how you like your bath temperature and how to dodge your bad moods. The rest are new, young, and mildly terrified, as they should be. You still engage in politics, of course, just differently now, through letters, dinners, and coded commentary about olive prices that are definitely metaphors. You write to former rivals with excessive politeness and veiled threats. Do visit soon, dear Livia. I would love to see how your son turned out. I hear he resembles a turnip. And then there's the vineyard. It was your idea. Everyone said women shouldn't manage land. You said, "Hold my wine," and now you produce the best vintage in the region. People drink it without realizing it's seasoned with subtle revenge. You name your wines after emotional states. Spite, mild resentment, forgiveness, aged poorly. Visitors arrive expecting warmth and wisdom. They leave with carefully worded life advice and a bottle of "Don't Test Me." You host philosophical salons in the atrium where you debate stoicism while feeding cookies to the dog and making pointed remarks about how the empire has gone downhill since you were young. And the prayers. Oh, the prayers. Every morning, You light incense at the family shrine and whisper names. Not requests, just names. That girl who spread rumors about your toga being last season? The man who called you too opinionated? The cousin who accidentally stole your inheritance? All of them. Names wrapped in honey, muttered under your breath, and sent to the gods with just enough ambiguity to make them wonder if you're asking for vengeance or just being thorough. You're not angry anymore, just remembering. And there's joy too, the deep, unrushed joy of choosing your company. You host a few close friends, other retired matrone with equally sharp tongues and looser morals. You drink too much, laugh too loudly, and occasionally dare each other to write scandalous letters to aging senators just to watch them squirm. You've even started writing your memoirs. Not for publication, of course, just to keep the truth somewhere safe. The working title? I Told You So, A Life in Sandals. At night, you sit, beneath the stars with a wool blanket, a cup of mulled wine, and your loyal dog, who probably has more political awareness than half the Senate. You listen to the wind rustle through the olive trees and think, yes, this is exactly how I was meant to end up. Rich, feared, and absolutely left alone, because Roman womanhood isn't a sprint. It's a siege. And you? You survived every battle with style, sass, and just enough poison to keep people guessing. So when people ask what happened to you, they say you retired gracefully. But you know better. You retired victoriously. And if Jupiter himself knocked on your villa door asking for a favor, you'd make him wait in the atrium, with a fig, and a reminder that you run this vineyard now. So tonight, as you drift off in your clean pajamas, under freshly laundered sheets, in a room that contains neither communal sponges nor passive-aggressive household gods, spare a moment for the Roman women who came before you, because they survived a world of daily rituals, sacred duties, political marriages, whispered scandals, and enough lead-based eyeliner to kill a medium-sized centurion. They endured childbirth without anesthesia, gossip without end, and in-laws with opinions stronger than the foundations of the Colosseum. They were daughters, wives, priestesses, slaves, midwives, merchants and mistresses. Some commanded respect with a single eyebrow raise. Others went quietly about their days spinning wool and dodging curses from jealous neighbors. They found moments of joy between the rituals, the labor, and the sheer absurdity of a culture that expected them to be silent and spotless while surviving bathhouses with no drains. They played their part in an empire that thought of them as background characters, and somehow still managed to leave behind traces of themselves in letters, tombs, and legends. They were clever, resilient, funny, and probably just as tired as you are right now. So sleep well, knowing that while you may have unanswered emails and a mysterious fridge smell, you also have hot water, private toilets, and the legal right to own your own socks. Luxuries denied to most Roman women for centuries. History may be full of unfairness, fleas, and open-air toilets, but it's also full of people like you, doing their best to survive the chaos, keep their dignity, and maybe, just maybe, train a peacock to fetch grapes. Good night, brave time traveler. You've earned your rest. And if the Lares and Penates of your household are listening, may they bless you with quiet dreams, lead-free makeup, and at least one day off from spinning wool.